I invite you to turn your Bibles to 1 Samuel chapter 1. 1 Samuel chapter 1. We do begin a brand new series this morning from, you guessed it, 1 Samuel. 1 and 2 Samuel, actually. And it will take us some time to get through this, and you may be wondering why we're doing both 1 and 2 Samuel together, because originally it was one book. They were not divided, so they were originally meant to be read together. And so we think about kind of what's going on around the world in the context of Israel. David comes onto the scene at quite a crucial time in the history of the Israelites. At this time, Israel had settled into the Promised Land, and they had experienced many years of turmoil. They were in all of these military campaigns and struggles and sin and rebellion and restoration. They eventually culminates in them asking God for a king. This was their answer to all of their problems. They determined by looking at all the other nations and peoples in the world that if we'll just get a king, then that will be the key to our success. That will answer all of our problems. And so in many ways, the book of Samuel presents the story of Israel's search for that king, for the one who would answer their problems, for the one who would bring restoration to them and this sense of comfort and stability. And so Samuel tells the story of basically them coming to the place where they determined David might be that ideal king, especially when he was compared with Saul. And Saul did not turn out the way that they had hoped, and so they looked to David. But what Israel thought what they were searching for was never to be found. And so readers of the book of Samuel are struck by how tragically David disappointed everyone in the end. They get to the story, and it's almost as if they read the end of this story and they're asked themselves the question, is that it? Is this really what we've been putting our hopes and dreams in? David is the best king that we could have hoped for? And look what happened to him. So they begin to ask the question, is there hope at all? Thomas and Greer give the purpose of the book of Samuel, and they write this: the book of Samuel helps us see a key component in the way God achieves his project of redemption. From Israel, the royal line of David will be key in providing the king who will heal the brokenness of the entire world. And so there are a lot of ways that Samuel serves as a mirror for ourselves. A mirror into our own hearts, a mirror into our own lives, as we see Israel's desperate search to do what? To just be like everyone else. If we can just get a king, we'll have the stability that all of these other nations have. If we can just get a king, maybe our financial situation will be more stable, and maybe we'll prosper even more. If we can just have a king like everybody else, then we'll have all that we need. So what I want us to do today is, as we look at 1 Samuel chapter 1, and we will consider the whole first chapter, I want us to zoom in. So we have this 30,000-foot view of what's going on in Samuel and what God is about to do. And we understand that the purpose of this book is God is unfolding these chapters. If it's not going to be Samuel, will do his job, but he was not the one they were looking for. Saul failed, David failed, but ultimately there would be this king who would provide everything they were looking for. But we can also use it as a mirror into our own hearts. We can find ourselves in much of the same places that the Israelites find themselves in. In 1 Samuel chapter 1, we are going to take that purpose, God unfolding these chapters to a better king. We're going to zoom in. We're going to zoom in to a certain man, verse 1 of Ramathaim Zophim. Now, if you don't know where that is, I don't know where you've been, because everybody knows where Ramathaim Zophim is. Actually, no one is really sure. This in the hill country of Ephraim. The man that we are considering, his name is Elkanah, the son of Jehoram, son of Elihu, son of Tohu. And if you're not familiar with that, I don't know if I can help you. Everybody knows This is what you need to know. There's a man, and this man had 2 wives. He had 2 wives. His first wife, her name was Hannah. And the name of his second wife, her name was Peninnah. Peninnah had children, but Hannah had no children. Now I want us to go to the Lord in prayer before we continue on. Father, every single part of your word is profitable for teaching, for rebuke, for correction, and for training us up in righteousness, that we may be complete and equipped for every good work. And many times, Father, maybe even most of the time, we need a mirror that we can peer into that divides our very soul and exposes who we really are. Not only for the purpose of exposing who we really are at the root of the core of our life, but for the purpose of you digging into us and cleansing us and transforming us through the gospel of Jesus Christ. So, Father, our prayer this morning is that you would transform our hearts by the renewing of our minds through your holy word. And we pray this in Christ's name. Amen. So we're zooming into Elkanah and the home that he is making or attempting to make with Hannah and Peninnah. And we read in verse 2, Peninnah had children, but Hannah had none. I want to continue to read from verses 3 to verse 7. So follow along with me in your copy of God's Word as we read together. Now this man used to go up year by year from his city to worship and to sacrifice to the Lord of hosts at Shiloh, where the 2 sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were priests of the Lord. On the day when Elkanah sacrificed, he gave portions to Peninnah his wife and to all her sons and daughters. But to Hannah he gave a double portion, because he loved her. But the Lord had closed her womb. Verse 6, and her rival used to provoke her grievously to irritate her, because the Lord had closed her womb. Verse 7, so it went on year by year. As often as she went up to the house of the Lord, she used to provoke her. Therefore, Hannah wept and would not eat. So very quickly, as we're zooming into this home and this situation, we find Elkanah and we find his first wife Hannah and his second wife Peninnah. We very quickly are introduced to the problem, and we find hopeless Hannah. And Hannah was his first wife, but she has no children. And we learn from the Scriptures why? Because the Lord had closed her womb. God had closed her womb. Now, Hannah was a woman who was down on her luck. She was barren. As devastating as a situation as that is for anyone today, it was even more so in that day. Why? Well, according to the Jewish Talmud, a person without children was considered as good as dead. It was even in some circumstances considered reasonable grounds for divorce. But there were basically 3 reasons why it was devastating, or the Israelites saw children as an essential part of not only a life, but a good life. The first reason is this, is the more children you had, the more labor you had. Right? Sometimes I've heard Dad say that before. The only reason I had kids is because I don't like mowing the yard. Right? So that was where the Israelites were. The more children you had, the more labor you had. The more labor you had, the more farming you could do. The more farming you could do, the more money you could make, and you get the picture. So that's one of the reasons. Sons guarantee that a family would be financially stable and occupy higher status. The second reason is this. Hannah lived before retirement accounts. She didn't have an IRA. She didn't have a 401k at her old job before she met Elkanah. So children were your retirement account. They were your assurity that whatever happened, the more children you had, the more likely you were going to be taken care of in your old age. And third, having children was necessary for the survival of the nation. As you read throughout the Old Testament, you see all of the military campaigns and all of the things that the government depended, or the people and nations depended on the people for their survival. So the economy and the military were completely dependent on having a large number of children born. So bearing children was literally a life or death issue for the families of the nation as a whole. And so, as a result of this culture, women who bore a lot of children were held in special places of honor. They were honored. If you had a lot of kids, you were seen as honorable. They were heroes, literally, to not only to their families, but to the whole nation. Women who couldn't bear children were seen as useless. They experienced shame rather than honor, and were looked upon with pity rather than respect. Walter Brueggemann, in his commentary, wrote this: that barrenness is an effective metaphor of hopelessness. There is no foreseeable future. There is no human power to invent a future. And here's where we find ourselves. In a culture that puts all of this significance on having children, Hannah can't have any children. To make matters worse, the other wife, Peninnah, had lots of children, and she reminded Hannah of that often. So we see the story. What is happening in 1 Samuel 1 is they're recounting the story of year after year. Elkanah took his wives and his family to go worship. So we can picture this. Maybe they're in the home and Peninnah comes in and says, "Hey, Hannah, since it won't take you as long to pack as it does for me, will you help me with all the kids?" Maybe she often reminds Hannah of all the work she has to do because of all these kids. "I'm just so tired because all of these kids. Hannah, you see all of these kids running around? They are driving me nuts. How's your day going? Oh, you must be so relaxed. It must be nice to be able to be you." And she constantly is reminding Hannah of her life and her fortune. Samuel records her rival, verse 6, used to provoke her. Tim Keller commented on this Hebrew word. This word literally means provoke, means to thunder or to roar like a storm. Tim Keller comments on this, and he says it's the only place in the Bible that the word is used to describe anything other than an actual literal storm. So the picture that we see Hannah living in is she's literally in a storm. Her emotions were thundering and roaring like a hurricane. Not only was she going through this, but she's been going through this year after year, and it's been continual. There's no relief for Hannah from this relentless reminder that she doesn't have children. Verse 7 tells us that her distress was so intense that she even refused to eat. You ever been there? For Hannah, she's in this emotional hurricane because life hasn't worked out the way she thought it was going to. Things were happening that were outside of her control that made her life a storm. You know the uncertainties when you get into the middle of a storm. You know the uncertainties of what's going to happen. There's a tornado warning, and you know it's coming. I remember last year I drove into a tornado by accident. I'm not one of those people that look for that. But I left my office, was going to see a hospice patient, and I thought the storm had gone over, and I didn't realize that there was another one. And so I inadvertently drove right into it, and I found myself in the middle of nowhere in this little old country store. I pulled into that country store, and I just was in my Prius. It's like the last vehicle that you ever want to be in. I used to be really cool. I used to have a truck, and I'm just not cool anymore. I drive a Prius and I wear glasses. So I was in my Prius in the middle of this storm, and I just remember sitting there, and there's nothing I can do. It's coming. There's nowhere for me to go. The tornado is coming. It's coming my way, and I just have to sit here and let it happen. That's what Hannah is going through in 1 Samuel chapter 1 in her life. Year after year, there's been this storm that she knows is continually coming, yet there's nothing she can do about it. So when I think about this, when I think about the hopelessness of Hannah, the hopelessness inevitably leads to despair. Despair will lead us to distress, and distress will lead us to depression. I got to tell you, if you're at the point where Hannah is and she's refusing to eat, you're depressed. But the question that comes from that is, where will we seek relief? Where will we seek relief from the storm? In verse 8, we find her loving husband trying to encourage her. Read along with me. And Elkanah, her husband, said to her, Hannah, why do you weep and why do you not eat? And why is your heart sad? Am I not more to you than 10 sons? Now, I don't think we can ever blame Elkanah for being the most tactful guy, but you have to give him credit for trying. You can see him sitting around with his family. Penina's on one side and all her kids are running around and eating. And then Hannah's over here. He's dishing out the food. He looks over at Hannah and weeps and says, there's 2 scoops for you. And more where that came from. The Elkanah is trying to offer her a romantic salvation. Isn't my love for you enough? Why do you need kids? And am I not enough for you? I should be worth 10 sons. His romantic solution failed to address Hannah's deepest hurt. It's not a question. We think about this. We think about Hannah. Hannah is in a place. There's a literal storm. There's nothing she can do about it. Her husband is offering her this romantic solution to her deepest problems and her deepest hurt. So where will we seek relief? If we can find ourselves in the same place, if we can find ourselves with that pain and that hurt, whether it's physical or emotional, where will we seek that relief? Will we seek the meaning and significance in our life? Will it be in a romantic relationship? Will it be in a new husband or a new wife or a new boyfriend or a new girlfriend? Where will you seek your relief from? What will address our deepest hurt? If you are in this place, if you're looking for that significance and that meaning, if you're in that place of hopelessness and it feels like a storm for you and there's nothing that you can do about it, where will you find your relief? There are many people in our culture who do look for it in those romantic relationships. If I can just have a better husband, or if I can have a better wife, then I'll really be happy. Or if I can make more money, if I can have a better job, if I can have a better house, if I can have a better car, if I can have better friends, if I can have a better church, if I can have a better preacher, watch it. If I can have a better fill in the blank, then I'll have what I'm looking for. And we'll spend our lives searching for hope, meaning, and significance in all of these other things. And we will seek to find it reflected in the culture that we surround ourselves in. There are a lot of people who will try to reflect this church culture. They'll play the part of going to church, but they don't really give God everything. And so it looks like they're searching for the right things in the right places, but really deep down they're not seeking that meaningful relationship with Jesus Christ. Not too long ago, last year, I occasionally have to go to Kansas City for doctoral seminars, and there's this little rest spot right when you come into Missouri that I found. So the last time I was going up there, I stopped there and used the restroom and took a break and all that. And I looked down this, there's this mountain stream really that comes through that spot, and there are people fishing down there. And I was watching them fish, and it became pretty curious to me what they were doing. So I began to watch them, watch these two guys in particular, and they were fishing, and they had caught this fish, and they took pictures of it and all of that, and none of that was out of the ordinary. But then I saw him give the pole to the other guy, and he threw the fish that was still on his line back into the water. The guy backs up with his phone, and he's videoing him reel this fish in again. And they did that like 6 or 7 times. And I'm just sitting there watching them do this, and every time that they're doing different things, but it's the same fish. And I was just struck by that, and what I was watching them do is really not fishing at all. Really what they wanted to do is they wanted this significance from catching a fish, but they were just catching the same fish over and over again and posting it on Facebook. They wanted people to think something about them that they really weren't. And this is the same thing that we do to find hope and meaning and significance in our own life. And maybe for us it's that fish that we caught a long time ago, and we just keep reeling that thing in over and over again, expecting it to eventually bring us some kind of hope or meaning or significance that it never has before anyways. So maybe the problem with your relationship is not the person you're in a relationship with. Maybe it's you're putting this weight of expecting them to fulfill you the way only God was meant to fulfill you. Maybe you're putting the weight on your job. You're trying to find significance and meaning in your job, and the only way you were created to really find that significance and meaning is the God who created you. And you just keep reeling that fish in over and over and over again, thinking that it's going to make you happy. See, Hannah's story, her pain and the vain attempts to mask that pain is replicated in each one of us in our own unique way. So we ask this question, where will we seek relief? But then where will we really find relief? Where will we really find relief? Let's keep reading in verse 9. After they had eaten and drunk in Shiloh, Hannah rose. I just want to stop there for a moment, because we can read over this way too quickly and lose the significance of that phrase. So what we find is not, we ask the good question of where will we seek relief, but then we have to ask the question, where are we really going to find relief? Maybe you didn't even ask that this morning when you came into this building, but you need to ask that question now. There are a million different places you can seek relief from or in, but I believe there's only one place that you will find relief. There's only one place that you will find relief from the storm in your life. Hannah got up. This small Hebrew phrase indicates a decisive action, a significant decision. Hannah stood up, resolved, and made a choice. Something had changed in her life. Hannah rose. Something had changed. We keep reading. Now Eli the priest was sitting on a seat beside the doorpost of the temple of the Lord. And she was deeply distressed and prayed to the Lord and wept bitterly. And she vowed a vow and said, "Remember me and not forget your servant, but will give to your servant a son. Then I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life, and no razor shall touch his head." So we're given there are two things that we see in her prayer right here. She has this new resolution in this vow, in this prayer that she makes to the Lord. And the first one is this. She asks the Lord to remember her. Why does she ask God to remember her? Because she knows that God is the one who loves and cares deeply for her, just like He does for other people like her. She knows that God is the one that can give her this significance and meaning, and the one that can calm the storm in her life. The second thing that Hannah does is she offers to give back to God any son that He gives to her. She offers this child to God through the Nazirite vow. Now, you may be wondering why she said in verse 11, "But will give to your servant a son, then I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life, and no razor shall touch his head." And she is committing her son to take this Nazirite vow. Now, basically, this vow, you may remember that John the Baptist took this vow. Samson took this vow. It's a special provision for those in the nation of Israel who wanted to serve the people like a priest, but we know that the only people who were inclined to do that were from the tribe of Levi. And so if you weren't from the tribe of Levi and you wanted to serve the nation as a priest, you could take the Nazirite vow. Ligon Duncan said the Nazirite vow provides an Old Testament picture of what every New Testament disciple should be. The Nazirite is a picture of someone who is kingdom-minded, someone who is concerned for the things that concern God, someone who is concerned to advance God's kingdom. The Nazirite is a picture of someone who is consecrated to God, who is devoted to God, who is given over to God's service. As a Nazirite, he is meant to be a God-treasuring person. And so Hannah is giving up all the claims that she has to her son in order to let him live in the temple and serve God. Hannah prayed for a son and then set aside every benefit a son could have possibly given her. If you remember back to where we began in the culture and the context of having kids, Hannah is disrupting all of that. She's giving her son his whole life, everything that he is, to the service of God. Yet Hannah, reading ahead in verse 18, and she said, "Let your servant find favor in your eyes." Then the woman went her way and ate, and her face was no longer sad. She's praying for grace. She's asking the God of all grace to give her grace. She rejoiced before she received a son, despite knowing that if she did receive one, she had renounced everything that she had prayed for, everything that she had hoped for. All of these years of being put down and being reviled by her own people and her own family. Being pitied by her husband because she wasn't the woman that he was hoping her to be. Maybe that's the reason he had two wives to begin with, because she couldn't provide him with a family. And Hannah lived her whole life in the midst of this pain, in the midst of this hopelessness. But she rose, she stood up, she went to the Lord, and she prayed and asked God to remember her. And if you'll give me a son, Lord, I'll give him right back to you for his whole life. See, Hannah's joy is no longer dependent on obtaining a son. Maybe the storm in her life was caused because all of these years she said, if I can just have kids, then I will be joyful. If I can just have one son, then I'll have everything that I need. But now the difference that we see is that her joy is no longer dependent on whether or not she has kids. Her circumstances don't have to change. Hannah's joy is now found in God, the God of her salvation. This discovery anchors her soul to a rock that quiets the storms of her heart. What would we might expect the progression of the order to be? I would say a lot of popular Christian movies would follow this storyline. Hannah prays, Hannah gets pregnant, Hannah has joy. We would tend to believe that's the way that it would work out, wouldn't we? And we look into the prosperity gospel and we look into all of these ideas that are being preached and proclaimed today. They're basically telling you that if you'll just have faith, then you will get all of these things. And once you get all of these things, then you'll have joy. Once you get the thing that you felt like you've been missing your whole life, then you'll have joy. But here we see this brand new progression. Hannah prays, Hannah is joyful, and then Hannah gets pregnant. Her joy is not dependent on her circumstance. Hannah would have had joy if she never would have had a son. Her joy was wrapped up in the person and the favor, the grace of God. This order of events is not empty. Hannah found joy and deep faith as she found her deepest needs met in God. Faith-filled Hannah, Thomas and Greer tell us, has found a source of joy and security greater than her hope of sons, God Himself. See, faith means rejoicing in God when our dreams, listen to me, church, faith means rejoicing in God when your dreams are still unfulfilled. Faith means rejoicing in God when your dreams are still unfulfilled and you are resting on God when life is still falling apart around you. That's what this faith gives us, is this hope and this joy in God that cannot be rocked by whatever storm comes in our life. Whatever is thundering or roaring or provoking us in our life, when we have this secured faith in God, we learn from Hannah, our joy is absolutely secure. What we see now is that people are as committed to God as they are committed to their circumstances. If life is good, then Lord, thank you, I'll be there. Whatever you need, here's my life. When life isn't good, what's the first thing to go? And all of a sudden we start looking for hope and security and all these other things that were never meant to give you meaning and hope and significance. God did answer her prayers. God would give her a son. Her son was Samuel. Samuel's name means God has heard. So he anoints a king. Samuel would anoint a king, King David, who would eventually point to the true king that we see in the person of Christ. So if you think that because of your hopelessness, because of your despair, because of the thundering and the roaring and the storms of your life, that God has abandoned you, that you don't have any significance. But when we read what the Scriptures say is, you have significance, you can have joy if you find that in who God is. And then it doesn't matter what your life looks like. When your joy is wrapped up in the person of God, it does not, listen to me, it doesn't matter what the rest of your life looks like. And here's what I mean by that. When your joy is wrapped up in the person of God, it doesn't matter how much money you make. Why? Because your joy is not in the amount of money that's in your bank account or what that money can give you. It is wrapped up in the sovereignty of God. When your joy is wrapped up in the person of God, all of a sudden it doesn't matter how talented or gifted you are at anything. Because you're valuable in whatever you offer to God. That's why the Gospels say, that's why Jesus said, if you give a cup of cold water in my name, you have served me well. How could God say that? Because however sufficient you are or efficient you are in serving the church doesn't matter. It's what you are attempting for God that matters. Whether you're in the nursery and you're changing diapers, or whether you are praying for people who never know you're praying for them. Whether you're the one leading the small group, whether you're the one leading the mission trip, whether you're the one engaging in discipleship, those things don't matter if your joy is first found in God. When we think about the significance of this story and we read throughout the rest of 1 Samuel chapter 1 and into chapter 2, and we see this song, and it points us to this picture of another song that was sang by another lady in the Bible, Mary. She sings this song of joy, and we'll look at this next week. It's pointing to the person of Christ. Nathan, why is that significant? Because God used a woman who was hopeless year after year after year after year, who was pitied by everyone else or provoked by everyone else. And in the midst of her deepest sorrow, in the midst of her deepest depression, in the midst of the darkest storms of her life, when Hannah rose, God used her as the next link in the chain for the redemption of everyone who would call upon the name of Jesus Christ. So here's why that's significant, because for you, maybe today, if you're in the deepest hole of your life, if you're in the darkest storm of your life, if you're ready to surrender everything that you are to God, maybe you are the next link in the chain as God continues to redeem the world through the work of the gospel. What could God do through you if you would just stand up? What could God do through you if you just stood up? Now, Hannah's a godly woman, but look what she did. Look what she did here. She saw God for who He was, and she stood up. She rose from her despair, and she called upon the name of God. Here's what I want you to see. What should our response be? Verse 15. Eli comes and he accuses her of being a drunk woman. And why is he doing that? Because she was praying. She wasn't speaking words, but her mouth was moving. And so Eli just writes her off as this drunk woman. And she comes and responds in verse 15. No, my Lord, I am a woman troubled in spirit. I have drunk neither wine nor strong drink. Read along with me what she says. But I have been pouring out my soul before the Lord. There is no person in this room who cannot do that. There's not a person in this room who cannot right now do what Hannah did. Faith-filled Hannah simply stood up, resolved that her joy was going to be found in God, and she poured out her soul to God. That's it. That's all she did. And then God did the rest. Then God took up and did what God does by redeeming and resolving problems and restoring a life that will ultimately be used for whose glory? For God's. There's not a person in this room this morning that cannot do what Hannah did. There are 4 things that I want you to hear very quickly as we conclude this. Number 1, hopefulness is a result of seeking satisfaction in things other than God. Hopelessness is a result of seeking satisfaction in things other than God. If you find yourself hopeless this morning, then follow that trail back to the source. What is the source of your hopelessness? What is the source of your despair? What is the source of your depression? Whatever you find at the end of that will be anything other than God. And so, Nathan, what's the point of doing that? Then you follow God's lifeline that He has set for us, and you pour your heart out to God, and you climb up out of that hopelessness. Problems like loneliness and insignificance aren't resolved in any other human being. They are cured by the love of God. Second thing, God is the source of joy we are all seeking. God is the source of joy we are all seeking. If we have God, we have enough. If you have God, you have enough. Number 3, affliction is not a result of God's absence. Affliction is not a result of God's absence. How many times have you gotten into a place in your life where you have been afflicted, or you've got storms, or whatever it is for your life, and your first response has been, God must have abandoned me. If I'm going through this, God must not be here anymore. be real right now. The only way that you will be able to stand up like Hannah did is if you're honest with yourself. Hannah was honest. Her joy was contingent on whether or not she had kids. She stood up, she looked to God, poured her heart out to God, and all of a sudden, all of that went away. So what is your response to the storm in your life right now? We've all felt abandoned by God at some point. The gospel is that Jesus Christ was forsaken for us. Jesus' death on the cross took our barrenness, our brokenness, and our hopelessness. He was forsaken so that we never would have to be. When we approach the cross, we find that all that has been defeated once and for all, if we have placed faith in the cross of Christ, we can be assured that we are not and never can be forsaken or hopeless. And finally, God remembers the afflicted. God remembers the afflicted. Hannah's story teaches us that God cares for those the world rejects. If you find yourself in a place like Hannah, hopeless, in despair, maybe even in depression, know that God cares for you deeply. And that His heart is for you. His word is for you. And He has thrown this lifeline to you. We need the faith of Hannah. Run to the cross and find there the love of God that pursues each of us. Find the love of the cross, that the hound of heaven set his nose to the ground to pursue you, to pursue your heart. And of all the people in the world, Christ set His sights on you. And He allowed God's side of His wrath to be set on Him so that you could be found, so that you would not have to be hopeless. God has not forsaken us, but desires to draw us back to a relationship with Him. No matter our situation, we can say with Hannah, Hannah rose. So what's your response? Your response this morning, if you're ready to climb out of the hopelessness, if you want to find meaning and significance, then do what Hannah did. Stand up and pour your heart out to God. Nathan, that sounds too easy. It is. It's absolutely unfair. There's nothing fair about the gospel. There's nothing fair about the gospel. When Jacob was reading Luke 15, as Jesus was telling this story about how the shepherd leaves the 99, referring to himself, how he leaves the 99 and goes out for the one. And all I could think was, how unfair. So I'm just one of the sheep. The point of the story is that He has done that. So Nathan, God has not spoken to you. God has spoken to you this morning because God's Word has been opened. And for you, yes, He has left the 99 and He has chased after you, relentlessly pursued you. And it's not, listen to me, it's not so that He can find joy in how many He catches. Listen to this now, this is really important. It's not so that He can find joy in how many He gets, because His joy is already wrapped up in His holiness and His righteousness. He is glory. Why is that important? When He pursues you, He's already glorified. So listen to me. Come on, track with me right here. And so He does it anyway. This means that He doesn't have to pursue you. He didn't have to leave the 99 to come found you. He did it anyway. That's why it's unfair. Because we don't deserve to be pursued by Him. We've fallen short of God's glory. That's what makes the gospel good news, is that God did it anyway. He pursued pursued you regardless of your sin, because his wrath has been satisfied in the work of Christ on his cross. And so now you can stand up and pour your heart out to God like Hannah did. If you're ready to do that, we're going to have an opportunity for you to do that this morning. So as the bands, you guys go ahead and come up. Caleb, as y'all begin to lead us in this time of response. That's it. It's that simple. It's that simple because Jesus has already done the work. He's already done the work for your salvation. You just have to pour out your heart and receive Him by faith. The work's been done. So respond to the God who has given all so that you would not be hopeless. I want to pray for us this morning.